Good afternoon, everyone. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. And today is business as usual. And I'm joined by Jonathan Kirsting. He's Vice President of all things marketing and media at the Tech Council. We're very thrilled to have our guest today. And I'm going to take a moment just to sort of lay up the show and then introduce Griffin Schultz, who will be with us talking about the company that he's leading. So just hang tight. We want to give thanks to our sponsors who have been with us right from the onset. Many of them have, particularly Huntington Bank. They have just played a critical role in helping small businesses navigate always, but also during this pandemic. And they're one of the region's most active SBA lenders. Sheets, if you don't know Sheets, you should know Sheets, but they have a mission to provide fast service and friendly service and quality products in clean and convenient locations. They are known across the industry as a company that constantly reinvents themselves. And as a result, they've actually opened up a little innovation hub right here in Pittsburgh, even though they're based in Altoona. And a few weeks ago, we had their COO on, Travis Sheets, who talked about their opening actually extending into outside of Columbus, Ohio. So we're pretty excited about what's happening with Sheets. And then, of course, we have Comcast. They're our newest sponsor, and they have been doing incredible things in our community to make sure that during this pandemic from the outset, they have been involved. So meaning that they have been working diligently to ensure that low-income families from across their territory could have access to the internet. So all of us know the issues that people have had with schools, as well as making sure that people have access when they're working from home. They have been waiving fees for internet essentials to dramatically expanding the group of families that were eligible for this benefit. So Comcast really does play a pivotal and important role in bridging the digital divide for our region. So thank you to all the sponsors. So today we're going to jump in. We're hosting Griffin Schultz, and he is the CEO of Rapid Flow Technologies, which is fresh off being named as the semifinalist in the Toyota Mobility Foundation City of Architecture of the Future competition. Long title, but lots behind it, and we're very excited to introduce Griffin. So Griffin, first of all, thanks for taking the time with us. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for letting everyone know about Rapid Flow. But before we talk about smart cities, let's just talk about Griffin. Griffin the man, Griffin the professional. You know, before you came to tech, you had worked in the political realm, you know, for Senator Harris Wofford and the Clinton Gore team here in Pennsylvania, but later as the assistant deputy mayor in the city of Philly. So talk about that background and how that led to the work that you're doing now and led you to Pittsburgh. And then, you know, of course, tech. So yeah. Thank you so much.
No, thanks for the invitation. And, you know, I've been on a lot of these calls and I really appreciate I've gotten a lot of value from all the folks that have invited. This program is great. So I really appreciate the invitation and the chance to come on. But yeah, so I worked for about 8 years in the 90s in politics and government, actually a lot of local folks too. Worked for a congresswoman from Cleveland and then the folks that you mentioned. But yeah, it culminated in, I was the assistant deputy mayor for the city of Philadelphia. So I have, you know, I have sort of a passion for, you know, cities and government and local government, especially. A lot of people say, you know, think that, you know, government is slow. And I think when you get to the state and federal level, it certainly slows down a bit. But right now, cities are innovating in very, very exciting ways. And not just here in the US, this Toyota challenge in Kuala Lumpur is a great example. We get so many international inbounds from folks who are trying to, you know, go through the transformation to create a smart city. So yeah, that background was really helpful. It's helpful now since most of our customers are cities. And then from there, I transitioned and got a business degree, got an MBA, and then had the opportunity to come to Pittsburgh to work at Free Market. So I've been in the Pittsburgh tech community now for 20 years.
Well, good. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're staying. So let's jump in and talk about Rapid Flow. The company has many attributes of Pittsburgh sort of like baked into their DNA. A great team, roots that trace back to CMU, a bit of early support with the likes of Henry Hillman, who we miss very dearly. tell us about rapid flow and the problems that you're trying to solve, and maybe weave into, you know, some of the legacy that's built up rapid flow to where they are today.
Yeah, sure. So the way the story goes, I wasn't around for the founding, but Henry Hillman, I guess, was stuck at a traffic light and said, my gosh, there's got to be a better way to do this. And, you know, had deep ties to Carnegie Mellon and knew about all the great technology development that was happening there. So he sort of challenged folks at Carnegie Mellon to, you know, see what they could do on this front. And that's where our co-founders, Stephen Smith and Greg Barlow, started collaborating on. They had been doing a lot in artificial intelligence around optimization planning and forward planning for the military. Steve actually had the first AI in space, and for complex business problems. So they took that optimization and planning theory and AI and directed it at traffic congestion and traffic management. So they first started building the technology in 2010 in a lab at CMU, and then started deploying it in the streets of Pittsburgh. So they started with about 9 intersections in the East Liberty area. That's East Liberty. This would be the view sort of outside of my office if I were in our office. That's some of the technology at an intersection that we need behind me. But basically, starting in 2012, I think they deployed the first intersections and took it from the lab to the street. And then over the next 5 years, deployed about 10 intersections per year, constantly refining the technology and improving it. And they had 50 intersections in Pittsburgh, delivering 20 to 40% reductions in traffic congestion, emissions, safety incidents. So Pittsburgh, and all that was funded by the Hillman Foundation, the Heinz Foundation, UPMC, right, other locals, again, still under CMU. So we were really incubated in the city of Pittsburgh by all these local organizations and Carnegie Mellon.
Well, yeah, that's great. You know, as you're talking about this, I totally remember when Henry was upset about the traffic lights. Miss him and his wife dearly. In terms
who hasn't sat at a traffic light and there's no traffic coming in any direction and you have to sit there for several minutes? This is such an easy problem to talk about.
Right.
What a lot of people, they felt that frustration. What a lot of people don't understand is the average American spends 97 hours stuck in urban traffic congestion a year. So, and it's a $66 billion cost a year for fleets. So everybody's had the personal frustration, but this is a massive, you know, economic inefficiency, let alone the environmental impact and safety issues as well.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. It's a great example of something being incubated inside of Carnegie Mellon or any university, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot to try to launch that.
For sure, and back to my background in cities, and it's just a great public-private partnership. You've got City of Pittsburgh allowing us to incubate and test some things here. You've got CMU as the educator, and then these funders as well. So it is a great example of how different groups can come together in this sort of P3 strategy.
But you know that if you don't see any traffic and no one's around, you can go through the red light, right?
I have no comment.
And
you can go red at most red lights. Right, sorry, you can go right at most red lights.
And we're not going to get into the Pittsburgh left, okay? We're not going there. Okay? Right. So as we look at connecting intersections to literally everything, can you talk about how important connectivity is going to be in terms of bringing data into 2 directions between the intersection of pedestrians, mass transit, cyclists, and even people with differing abilities, right?
Yeah, for sure. The most recent development that's exciting for us is 5G, and that can really allow much faster communication at the intersection. So our solution is decentralized. The software is at every intersection. You can't afford that latency where data has to come back to a central server. So 5G is going to allow that much faster communication. So that's just one development that will really help our solution. We're agnostic to the type of communication systems that we use, but that's certainly going to be a huge help. And right now, our system primarily uses passive detection using video detectors or radar, and it's one way. The good thing is vehicles and pedestrians don't have to do anything. They just go about their route. The detectors passively detect them, give our software that information, and then we optimize. But there's a future, and we already have some beta solutions in this area where autonomous and connected vehicles and even pedestrians can communicate with our software, either through a cellular connection, in the future 5G, provide us richer information like their route, how fast they're going, things like that. And it allows us to create even another level of optimization. So that communication, as it improves, will only allow our software to unlock even more optimization potential.
Yeah, this whole thing of interconnectivity is really the next iteration that's going to manifest for each and every one of us. What has surprised you so far? Like even over the last 6 months, as you think about COVID and any changes in patterns and,
Yeah.
technology.
Well, I think let's talk about transportation for a moment. What didn't surprise us was just the massive drop off in vehicles in cities. So that was to be expected. But
Right.
what's been a little surprising is already in China, for example, the major cities in China are back to or near their pre-COVID congestion levels. I just saw a headline that in the U.S. Vehicles or travel is back up to 90% in vehicle travel. I don't think that's yet quite the case in cities. I think that's more on highways and suburban areas, but it will catch up in the cities. But we went back and looked at the last few, I know this is a health-related recession, but it certainly has had an impact on the economy. If you look back at the last several recessions, there's been either no or mild impact on traffic congestion. So that's been the case. So I guess it shouldn't be a surprise, but it's bouncing back pretty quickly. And I think folks will start to feel that. Even if you get 20 to 30% less commuters, coming into a city, they were so congested, many of them before, you're still going to need to solve this problem.
Well, yeah, we still need to solve this problem because you have more cyclists, you have more people walking, and then you have people with a varying array of disabilities that are, relying on public transit. That I don't see that going away, even if the car situation shifts a little bit.
For sure. And the other big pre-COVID trend was this migration to cities. 2.5 billion more people around the world are expected to move to cities pre-COVID. And then two things I think that won't be affected by COVID is the amount of online commerce that creates packages that need to be delivered. FedEx and UPS and other shippers are seeing levels, during COVID that they see around the holiday season, which is their peak. And then the second is, increased usage of Uber and Lyft. And folks might not know, something like 60 to 70% of Uber and Lyft rides, when you interview those folks, they would have taken the bus, ridden a bike, walked to their destination. So 60 to 70% of Uber and Lyft rides are adding single passenger, vehicle, car traffic to a city, which is drives the most congestion. So those trends aren't going to change, certainly, and could increase.
Well, there's the beginning of some data of some exodus over some urban areas right now across the United States. So there's definitely a sense of shift to, if you're going to have to work from home, then you might as well live in a place that's got a little bit more sprawl for you.
Right.
And whether that's suburban or not. But I don't think that would eliminate the problem that you're trying to solve.
Well, and that just moves the problem. That's a great example. One of our customers is Portland, Maine. And Portland, Maine has had a ton of migration from Boston, a little less so from New York City, but people in Boston where it's really congested, high cost of living, housing is expensive. They want a better quality of life, so they will move to a city like Portland. And then if Portland suddenly has this population influx, which they want, but then they can't handle it, they have to manage that problem before it gets out of control, and then they have that exodus. So the problem often just moves around as people move and change their behavior.
Right, I would totally agree. I think that, and we'll see what happens over the next few months, because there's been a huge amount of exodus from some of these cities. So I would imagine all our data's lagging. Who are some of your customers right now? Can you talk about any of them?
Yeah, so we have 16 cities in the US and Canada that have purchased our solution, our main solution, track, and we're deployed in about half of those. The others are in various stages of deployment. But the big ones, obviously, we started in Pittsburgh. Atlanta was our second customer, then Portland, Maine, and then a couple of suburbs of Boston, Needham, Mass, and Quincy, Mass. And then a suburb outside of Chicago, Illinois, some suburbs of Philadelphia. We've expanded around Pittsburgh, Harmer, PA, for locals, Harmer, Marshall Township, a few more suburban deployments. But then we had two new customers in Canada, one outside of Edmonton in Western Canada, and then a suburb of Toronto. So that was a big win to go across the border. In Edmonton, that deployment was the first deployment that we did where we never stepped foot in the city. So we totally deployed our system remotely, which bodes well for a COVID environment where we can't necessarily get out to and travel as much, or international deployments where we can just do it all from here because it is a software-based system. Mm-hmm. And then we're really excited. Our newest customer is Boston, Massachusetts. They, speaking of Boston, they have 800 signalized intersections, and many of them have very, very old, if any, technology. So they're deploying their first 40-ish intersections over the next year or two, and they chose our technology, and that was probably the hottest, competitive opportunity in 2020 in our market. So it was a big win for us, and we beat some of the big players. So we're really excited to have Boston as our newest customer.
That's great. Jonathan, I think there's a couple of questions out there.
Bunch, yeah, they're starting to roll in. Griffin, got some good ones here for you. So let's start with Matt Leidick. He wants to know, can you speak to the coordination between multiple lights in the main road sequence, kind of like you see in the core of Oakland, to support traffic flow? How is that, which has been in place for quite a while now, similar or different to what rapid flow does?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So a lot of our, a lot of the technologies that started in the space in the 80s and 90s, they worked on sort of what I call analog or old traffic theory, which is when you have, let's say, 5, 6, 10 intersections like Fifth Avenue or Forbes Avenue in Oakland, you have vehicles that are going through there, the predominant traffic flow, you want to give them a green tunnel and you want to coordinate all those. So if this one goes green and it takes about 11 seconds to get to the next one, in 11 seconds you want the next one going green, 11 seconds after that the next one, and coordinate those. So a lot of the systems do that, but they can't break that coordination. So as soon as you get into an environment where you start getting more cross traffic, it can't break that coordination. So our system tries to do both. It does do both. So that's why we are edge compute. Every intersection optimizes its own intersection, and we do local optimization, but then we share that information with the next intersection. So we might our software will tell the next intersection, I'm sending X amount of vehicles to you in however many seconds. And if the right thing to do for the software is to create a green tunnel across 10 intersections, it will do that, but it won't force that. If there's side traffic that is demanding that intersection at a higher level, it will allow that traffic to go through. So that coordination aspect is critical, but in a city environment, you want to be very flexible and be able to handle traffic from all directions.
Very cool. I mean, so we have a reminder here from Dave saying 2 wrongs don't make a right, but 3 rights do make a left. And that seems to be a universal law of physics right there. So here's a great question from Christine Ferguson. Does your strategic plan include accelerated deployment in the city of Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so Pittsburgh has a federal funding to do, it's called their Smart Spines project. So they want to upgrade 150 additional intersections, not just with adaptive traffic control technology, but all kinds of ITS, intelligent transportation system solutions. So yeah, Pittsburgh has a plan to, in fact, they're just starting to put the planning together on that. That will probably be rolled out in the next couple of years. So for sure, there's plans for more.
Very cool, very cool.
So last year, you and Jonathan may have been spotted driving around the city in a Tesla Model S as a part of our Road Trip 2.0. It was supported by Duquesne Light, and all that, at that time you told Jonathan you deployed to 5 cities already and had 7 more in the queue. So let's fast forward? How many cities have you reached? Are you growing your team here in Pittsburgh? Talk a little bit about your operations.
Yeah, so we've grown to 16 cities, and as I mentioned, 2 of those are in Canada, so the growth has been great. And we've got a nice backlog of projects that we're working on at the moment, deployments. So that's been great. And the team has grown over the last couple of years, but again, it's a pretty scalable solution, and we've generally bootstrapped the business, so we haven't done a lot of massive hiring. So now that we've sort of, feel like we've got product market fit, for sure, and the successes that we have, now we're gonna start to make the next step and start to ramp up the business. So we will do some hiring in the future. But yeah, right now it's been a pretty small team, and I want to take my hat off to the team. I mentioned our co-founders, Steve and Greg, but our team, they've been doing great work during COVID, all remote. And again, as long as we can, the communication that we talked about earlier, Jonathan and Audrey, as long as we can remote into the intersection, we can work remotely. And that's what our team has been doing, deploying cities remotely in our technology and supporting and maintaining the technology. So that's been great, and my hat off to the team that's done a great job.
So what do you want Pittsburgh to know? What do you want from the tech community in terms of how we could be helpful for you?
Yeah, I guess the one on maybe on the business front, but one maybe on the personal front. I think on the business front, just getting the word out. There's no reason why anyone should sit at a traffic light and with no one else coming and have to sit there and just waste time. There's no reason why fleets should lose $60 billion a year. There's no reason why pollution should be the level that it is in the city. There's ways to solve this, and it's only going to improve.
Right.
We had talked about communication at the intersection, communication back and forth, changes that we're going to have to adapt to. Think about autonomous vehicles. Let's think a few decades in the future. I think we all, especially here in Pittsburgh, where there's so much autonomous vehicle technology and innovation, I think I've been surprised a little bit that the technology keeps getting pushed out to when is it going to be massively adopted. But when that occurs, there's similar studies to the Uber and Lyft that autonomous vehicles could create much more congestion, not less, depending on the ways that technology is deployed. So, getting the word out that this works. It's not just a test environment in Pittsburgh spun out of CMU. This really works, and we can do this everywhere. And then on the personal front, not really anything to do for us, but I've just really been impressed in the 20 years that I've lived here. I thought when I moved here and being part of the whole free markets thing, people said this was the greatest time to be in tech, in Pittsburgh, and look how much better it's gotten, since then. I really appreciate this community. I really appreciate the folks that I've learned from, the mentors that I've had, the talent of people that I've worked with. And we always talk about funding as a challenge, and certainly it is, but again, look at the Rapid Flow story. Good opportunities will find money, and it doesn't necessarily have to be traditional, avenues. So yeah. So
as we wrap up, I want to know, tell us about the Toyota Mobility Challenge. I introduced that, but I don't think we really articulated what it is.
Yeah, so that's really exciting for us. Over 90, so it's basically an open call to present cutting edge solutions around transportation and that lean towards smart city solutions. And there were over 90 applicants, and they've cut it down to 16. We're not whatever becomes before semifinalists, and then we get to present our solution to the decision board, and then they'll cut it down to some semifinalists and then some finalists that actually get to deploy the solution. So we're still in the early stages of this, but yeah, it was nice to be picked among 90 plus other solutions around the world that are trying to affect change. And one thing we didn't touch on that is part of our proposal in this challenge is pedestrians. And our technology doesn't just work for cars, doesn't just work for fleet vehicles. It also contemplates bicyclists, people on scooters, pedestrians. And our collaboration, our ongoing collaboration with CMU through our founder, Steve Smith, who still runs a lab there, we've done a lot of work with the U.S. Department of Transportation with disabled pedestrians, for example, blind pedestrians who walk up to an intersection and through their mobile phone, communicating with our software at the intersection and other technology that we leverage there, saying, I want to cross the intersection, and we can tell them through their phone verbally how much time is left to cross, and we can extend the time if they need extra time. So whether you're a blind pedestrian or someone in a wheelchair that needs more time to cross, this is not just about moving cars as quickly through an intersection as possible, or moving FedEx or Amazon trucks. This is really making a whole transportation network work, and that includes pedestrians of all stripes. So that's a big part of our proposal to the city is again creating a great transportation environment, not just moving vehicles more quickly.
So have you seen these other cities thinking about mobility, like in terms of, are there any easy changes we can make in Pittsburgh that can assist all this? Are there any things just that you could wave your magic wand?
No, I think we're doing it. The autonomous vehicle companies, we've worked with a couple locally here. They're so welcoming to run tests with us, and they get benefit from it as well. But there's great collaboration going on. I think Pittsburgh is doing a fantastic job. So the current administration, the previous administration, just being innovative and letting companies like ours really innovate and test here in Pittsburgh. I can't think of anything specific other than, like I always try to do, is just promote technology coming out of Pittsburgh.
That's great. Thanks for being such a great ambassador. Thanks for sharing a little bit about your professional journey. I think that's really interesting in terms of sort of a non-traditional role, but the importance of your experience in government affairs and, in our elected officials. That really probably helps tremendously in terms of your ability to navigate in terms of business development. And thanks for making Pittsburgh your adopted home now, and being such a terrific sport about it. So we're going to be paying attention to you, Griffin, and the work that you're doing. Hopefully that you'll be adding to your team and everyone's staying safe. Really appreciate your time. I believe if anyone wants to reach out to you, they can go to the website. Maybe Lexi can put it up there in the chat. And I'm sure that Griffin will be very, very open to any kind of feedback and engagement, because he knows how important civic engagement really is. So I want to give a shout out to you. And I want to tell everyone, we'll be here tomorrow, but next week's also an insane week. We have Monday, we're kicking the week off with Brad Feld. He's the founder of Techstars. He'll be joining us and talking about his new book that I've had the pleasure of getting a peek at, which is Startup Community, the Startup Community Way. And it will be really a fun, deep dive with Brad. And then we're partnering with the Jewish Health Foundation, and they have put together, and in honor of 100 years of women's suffrages that are ability to vote. And next week we're doing 4 days, really 3 or 4 days, right, Jonathan? 4 days of feminism, entrepreneurism, focusing on intersectionalities, focusing on medical devices, focusing on women who are doing some pretty amazing things here in Pittsburgh. So we're packed for that week. And the week after, we'll hear again from the Port Authority to hear what they're doing. Griffin, I'm sure you'll be interested in hearing from Catherine as well. So we do have a packed time, even though I know we're already coming up on Labor Day weekend, which is sort of insane. That's so great. I want to give everyone a shout out. Thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. But most of all, thank you, Griffin, for the leadership and the work that you do right here in our backyard.
Great stuff.
Yeah, and Audrey, I want to thank you and the Tech Council for doing this. I've been, as people that attend a lot of these know, I ask a lot of questions on these noon calls. Usually when you have elected officials on, I'm making sure that they're not cutting funding to important things like transportation infrastructure. I think especially, during the whole beginning of COVID and all the COVID relief information that you brought to the table was super helpful. So again, I think it just validates, you know, why I feel great about having moved here and made my career here. It's a great community, and I love the fact this community really comes together. So thanks for your leadership there.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you here tomorrow. Stay tuned.